Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Artist Next Level podcast. I'm super happy to be here with you today. There are three of us today here. We're going to be sharing about that emotional moment when you are in the studio and all of a sudden you find something that works. We're going to try to talk about that, describe it, what it feels like it, what emotions come with it, and how far can we take it. So we're going to bring our experiences, our ideas, and it's going to be great.
Resources, inspiring interviews, business practices, and practical advice to take your art career to the next level. Join Sergio Gomez in today's Artist Next Level and get ready to take control of your career.
With us today, we have, of course, our good friend Drew Harris and I, who will be hosting the episode. And we have a special guest, artist Lee Morrison. She is based in Portland, and she's an artist who we have met through the Artist Next Level program. She has been in our program for quite a bit. She was also an artist who participated in the Weeble Art Retreat that we have done before. And we have been witness of her success in her career, starting from scratch recently and coming from another career and building something, brand new. And it's been really exciting to see her success going through the process of finding her voice and also experiencing great successes from that as well. So Lee, welcome to the show. Drew and I are super happy to have you.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sergio. Thank you so much, Drew. I am very happy to be here. Very honored to be here. This is fantastic, and I'm very excited to talk about these things. And I can't wait to just dive into it.
That's exciting. And Drew, it was really good also to chat with you last week. We had got some really good comments on the previous episode about the struggles and the hustle that we have gone through. So in this episode we'll continue sharing stories. But how are you? Good to see you.
I'm good. Yes, I'm very good. Yes, and this segues in nice to what we're going to talk about today, because we all have our struggles, and we know that you, of course, Lee, have transitioned from one career into another, and doing very well with it. So it's really exciting, and and there's always struggles, and we love to hear about that stuff. So feel free to tell us all you have about your about your success, your struggles, your wins, your losses, that kind of stuff.
That's awesome. I was thinking about prior to coming to today's conversation, about this idea of finding something that works, right? When you go in the studio, it's a search, right? It's a constant search to find that what works. And at the beginning, it's difficult. And I was thinking, the three of us here, Drew, you were the first one who found something that works because you've been making art the longest from the three of us. I would be in the middle, and then Lee, after that. So, I would like to hear from the three of us, talk about, the first time that you felt that you found something that works. And even I always say works in between quotations, right? Because it's like a mystery word how that happens. So who wants to go first?
Well, Lee, you're in the hot seat today, so
all right. Well, I will share a little bit of this. And again, I am quite new to all of this, so a little bit of a time frame. I've been painting for about probably 8 years, maybe, a little bit on and off, just teaching myself how to paint. But about a year ago, I decided to show my art. Or a year and a half ago, I decided to show my art. I used to paint a little bit here and there, but a year and a half, I said, hey, I think I am ready to show my art, because I don't know what I'm making. I have no idea what I'm making. And this happened when I switched careers, as Drew was saying. I am a dentist, and I sold my private practice about May of 2021. And right around November is when I signed up with the artist neck level, and I was ready. I was absolutely ready. And yeah, we did Wevolve, and I think that was monumental for me because I still remember when I was showing you guys my different paintings,
Yes.
and I had done a little bit of abstract, and I think I had paint a face here and a dog there, and was trying to do my due diligence and continue. And then you guys saw one of my paintings and one of these and said, hey, I think that's something. I think you got something there.
Yes.
And Sergio said, yeah, I remember that from your Instagram. And I think it has the right amount of abstract and the right amount of, figurative. I had no idea what you meant. I had to look it up. What is figurative? Because I was
I
like,
love it. I
figures,
love it.
what is he talking about? And then I went, okay, I get it. And I think I always knew those trees were dear to me as opposed to other things that I had painted before. Because when you're trying to paint and I think you're new, well, first of all, you have this massive imposter syndrome that you have to get rid of that. And that's probably a whole other podcast of how to get
And it
rid
never goes away.
We
I
just
think
tame it for a little
mine
bit.
got really far from me, and I'm very grateful. Because I think I was always doing that dance with it, And I thought, this cannot continue to be a dance between me and the imposter syndrome. Like, this needs to be a duel to the death. Like, one of us is just gonna die, right?
Well
Either
done.
my art or it. And yeah, so I think it's pretty far now, and that's tremendously has helped.
Yeah.
And actually, um, Dr. Yanina has a lot to do with that in that book, How to Crush Self-Sabotage. That I used to take that book and go read it with my goats in the summer, last summer, and I did the exercises. But in any event, I think when you realize that you have something is when you see, and this is how I take it, right? To some, finding your style or finding what works might be, what is selling or what looks like something else or what looks trendy or what looks cool. To me, finding your voice in your work, it's when you're so true to yourself, making your art, that it becomes really almost mirror like a reflective surface. And then when people look at it, ironic enough, they hear themselves.
Of course.
I think that's kind of sort of how I see it. Like, the more true to myself and the more I put my voice into my paintings, the more it resonates with my audience, and they see themselves in it and they hear themselves in it, and then it's about them. And I feel because of that, then that's successful. I feel like when you don't have your voice, or when I was in my early stages, there was nothing to see in my work and it was murky, so people would look at it and there was nothing that reflected back. And so it didn't exist, right? Because to me, a piece of art exists when it's being appreciated, when it's being looked at. I can create it, but to me, it becomes a real entity, almost like a pet, because it's a real entity. But when people are looking at it, and people tend to see themselves when they connect, right? And the artwork makes them maybe answer so many questions, right? Or
So
gosh,
I have
huh?
so I have to interject here for a moment.
Yes.
First question would be: so, do the goats get any credit for this? Uh,
I know they
and
do.
yeah, and I think
They
for
love
our listeners, we have to explain. You went from dentistry to paintings in this conversation, and then you mentioned goats.
yes.
So, uh,
I was gonna ask,
well,
like, some of my
yeah,
friends gonna say, what did I
yeah.
hear ghost?
Now, what is this woman doing? She's a dentist. Is
I
she
know.
an animal dentist, or uh, you live on a farm and you raise goats in Oregon, and you were previously a dentist. But I do really like what you said about this mirror concept
Mhm.
and understanding that point where you made that transition, and all of a sudden it connected with your audience. And if you look at your work, which is beautiful and right behind you there, you also have that metaphor in the work. There's a reflective quality where the viewer sees as a mirror or something of glass like. So I think you've transitioned really well from that where you said the work was kind of murky and really undefined, and then you moved into something, and it was an instant. You sort of knew it. This is your direction, and you could set all of that murkiness behind. So yeah, I think you did that and are doing that. So that's very, very good.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I remember, that Weeble session where,
Mm,
you share your work and you talk about it, and we looked at, some of your early fractal pieces and some of the figurative pieces you were working on, and we kind of all said, yes, that's that have, the abstraction that you're working with. There's something there, right? There's something in it, and you went on and you actually worked on it, because there's one thing
yeah.
when you actually listen and then you do the work, or not, right? And you decided to actually take upon that and go back to the studio and keep working at it, making it more, which at the beginning they were looking all too similar, but then you started to, learn from them and start to also evolve as well. And that's a beautiful
Yeah.
process to see. Yeah.
There's a yeah. You refer back to this Weevil, and I remember that moment when we had that chat
Hmm. Yeah.
because you were showing us some figurative work, and you were showing you knew it was your new work. It was
Mhm.
the reason you were there was to show and identify the a positive direction in your work, something that we were a sounding board or we were the mirror,
Hmm.
looking back and saying, okay, Lee, you've got the figurative work, you've got this other work, but here I think this is something that you really have, and maybe you're even unaware of it, that this is something unique. And I think you heard it. And that's the success of this Weevolve program, that you are a good example of someone that really heard it and you took it back to your studio and you started working toward it. There are people that don't want to take that chance. They understand it, but they're not entirely sure that they can pull it off. You went back in with complete confidence. So you're no longer that imposter syndrome,
Hmm.
of doing so many different elements. Now
Yeah.
you've got something that is very strong, very uniquely you, and you knew it. And you
Yeah.
just started working and you worked every angle of that. So
Hmm.
well done on that. You know,
Oh, thank you.
uh, you're one of our big success stories.
Thank you. It was monumental. It was truly, truly monumental. I mean, just deciding to do it and
Mm,
opening up, showing you guys I didn't know, and you know um for you to say, hey, there's something there. And
yeah.
Drew, I remember you said, those figuratives, no. I remember you were like, nah, you're
Excuse
going
me.
to, yeah.
Well, I apologize if I did that.
No, no, no. And I loved it because this is what you said. And again, a lot of the things from back then, now they make sense because I
Yeah.
understand more about art. And so you said, no, those figuratives, no, no, Lee, you're going for pretty. That's boring. And I was like, what does he mean? But then you said, well, you talked about the trees, Drew, and then you said, if you want me to elaborate in anything I said, feel free to message me and say, hey, Drew, can you expand on whatever?
Mm.
And I still need to take you up on that because I still, don't know much about. And I thought, I don't want to waste his answer and I don't want to waste his elaboration when I still don't know much. So I still have that chip saved.
Well, okay. Well,
But,
anytime,
but
as you know.
yes, but because Sergio also tells us exactly how to apply ourselves, how to do
Yes.
due diligence, and how to systematically approach the steps on that ladder. That's sort of what I did, right? He says,
Mm.
hey, now do this, now perhaps do this.
It's all a
And
process. Yeah,
it's
it's a
all a
process
process.
in a sort of numbered in a way.
And
You go
he's
from step to step.
very
Yeah.
similarly
Mm.
explain things the way I like to learn it. Like, Lee, this is the end goal. This is how you need to go about it. And so if you want to achieve, this, then you need to go through this. But this is also going to have a multi-step. So then we need to do this, but in a very organized way. And I just did and started doing it. I'm still doing it, right? But
That's great.
it's and then when I hear, so in the show today or last night, a lady was looking at my paintings, and of course she explained it was like tax season and she wasn't going to be able to afford it, which is not here or there, but she said, oh my gosh, she said, I love your art. And she looked at one of these pieces and she says, I can almost hear them.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, like that
This is
validation.
an interesting.
Mm-hmm.
This is fantastic that you say
Love it.
this, because there was something, in my own personal research of your work and what we're going to ask you today, things that may just come out of as a surprise. One of the things that your work always reminds me of is, if anybody here has ever been through an ice storm, which I think both of you probably have, being in the north and the northwest.
Yeah.
The idea that the trees have a sound to them. The trees, when they sway, will have this sort of almost like a tinkling sound. And that's what your work always reminded me of.
Aw.
It's like an ice storm, but in pure fall color.
Aw. Oh, that's amazing to hear. That is amazing to hear that. Thank you so much. That just makes my heart sing.
Well, here you go.
But those are the moments when you say, hey, I think that is my voice, because people hear the things that they love the most, the things that warm their hearts. You hear your things, and it's because I have been true to myself when I put the brush on the canvas. I'm not focusing on pretty, because art is supposed to make you feel something. So I put that brush to the canvas, and I am sort of being true in that journey. And I think that's how you find your style. And of course, you have to have feedback from people.
Of course, and this is going to change. Your career will change. Even after this weekend show that you've just done, your work will change again, based on the comments, based on the reaction. There's going to be certain pieces that garnered, great reaction, and there's going to probably have been some pieces that kind of were looked over, and you can feel it. Then you can really guide and judge, what you should be striving for, or the next direction. And I think, Sergio, if you can talk on that, because I think it's a really important thing where you pick up on elements that are your strengths. And back to the Weavol, just quickly, that was the thing that I never, I feel kind of bad now, because I said, okay, put the nudes and the figurative work aside. Well, I did feel that your strength really was so uniquely you in the series that sits behind you, rather than because I think we're all trained in the figurative work and the nudes and that kind of thing, and until you master it, really, and master something that is identifies as yours, it's just in another group of figurative painters.
Yeah.
And while I don't discourage that, I encouraged the one element that perhaps you were slightly unsure of.
No,
And you went ahead. You went ahead with it, and I
Oh
think.
yeah, I think when you're starting, like let's say it's the same thing. If you're starting and you
Yeah.
want to find your style, you're going to try 10 different things until it becomes your style. If you want to
Absolutely.
apply for, let's say, a gallery and you're starting, you're going to apply to 10 to get
Mm,
one. And the way I
absolutely.
see this, and Sergio said this, he said the reason why I get yes is because I get so many no's. I remember he said that last year,
That's a
and
great quote.
it hit me like a truck. And I remember that. I have this
Mm.
stupid gift to remember what people say. In any event, and so the way
Especially when they're talking about our art.
Yeah.
and the
Yeah,
I
way
we
forget
I
what I
always
think about
remember.
it is, I'm not going to think that 9 of those are failures and one
Mm.
is success. Or I'm not going to think that I painted 10 different things and 9 are, total failures and one is success. The way I think about it is to find the one, it takes an effort of 10 because you will find the one if you put the effort of 10. But
Right.
you
Yes.
can
Yeah.
think about it's 9 failure and 1 win is you will get the
It's a
win, but
process.
effort is a 10. Now, when you get the 1, then your number 2 probably takes an effort of 9. When you get a 3,
Now you're getting into like the math of it.
it's how my
Exactly.
mind works.
Wait a minute, I got to write that down now. Hang on. You have a calculator.
And I
And
know this, like,
so,
yeah, as you know, as you're finding more opportunities, also
Mm.
your confidence level begins to grow. And that's something
Yes.
that, we talk in on Instagram Messenger, this idea of, you know you start finding those opportunities kind of help you realize the value of your work too. You begin to charge more for it, without feeling like, am I charging too much? Because now you have more confidence, and confidence also, it has like this
Mm.
energetic force that also, when you put yourself out there with confidence, you attract more yeses, in a strange way.
mhm,
It always happens. And of course, not everything is a yes, but you'll find more of it just because your confidence level is higher, and you are more unstoppable. You're an artist on a mission, right? You're more unstoppable
right.
in that sense. Like, well, that person said no, that's okay. There are
Mm.
other 10,000 who could possibly say yes. And I always say, you
But
may be,
there's a good point that to
yeah,
reflect to what Lee is doing today, as opposed to some of the people we know. They get that one no, and it
hmm,
just annihilates them.
yeah,
It just sets them back, and they say, I don't think
yeah,
I'm going to
try again.
continue to proceed.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
what Lee did was, she took your advice from the marketing perspective,
Hmm.
and knew that a failure is not a failure,
Right.
or a no is not a no. It's actually just an encouraging yes. It's
Right.
kind of pushing you into the next level. And if
Yeah.
you let it affect you, you're going to be sitting at home thinking, I wish
Yeah.
I did this,
Right.
where Lee did it. So that's a good thing. So back to you, Sergio.
Yeah. No,
Sorry.
you're like, you may be, and for our friends who are listening or watching, you may be one ask away from the big yes that will change everything in your art career. You
Absolutely.
may be just one ask away, and that might be the one that you gave up. So that's something for us to think about it. Sometimes there's one yes that can change your entire career as an artist. So we keep on asking, right? We're asking people, and that is wonderful. And kind of going back to the topic of like finding that thing that uh changes everything in one way, or has something of value. um I would love to hear also from you, Drew. When was the first time that you found something you, that was it for you, that you thought there was value in it?
And as far as the paintings, or
Yeah, yeah,
the
like in your
reaction from
studio.
the community. Oh yeah.
No,
Oh
like
well,
when
the
you create something like, I think I got something. He kind of like when Lee, right, started working on those fractal pieces, and he said,
yes.
I think there's something here, and started to make more. How about for you?
I don't recall really specifically. Like mine was a transition. So
Okay.
I started as a strictly color field painter, working in
Mhm.
some of the colors that you work in, Lee, like a really bright colors. I was using text in the work, but little sticky letters and that kind of stuff. And it was so time consuming. So I think once I eliminated all those time consuming things, uh, I got right into the color and the painting. And then when I realized that my very darkly emotional pieces or very
Mhm.
sort of personal pieces were actually, people were reacting to. I was getting more reaction to that than than the sort of more acceptable work that I was doing
Mhm.
at the time. All of a sudden, it sort of clicked. I think that was the
I think
moment
that's it. Yeah,
when,
that's
yeah, when
what.
someone said, "Oh my God, it's so
There's
dark,
something there. Uh-huh.
but I love it," and you think, okay, now I went into the sort of researching, why do they like that? Why do they
Mhm.
need the dark? And my theory has always been that I can put work up on in people's houses or in corporate collections, primarily in people's houses. So when a collector comes and buys, a dark piece, something
Mhm.
moody, something sort of aggressive or assertive or whichever, not a happy, painterly painting. This is my work. The darkness in it, even thematically, might be dark. I've always said it's actually the collector's way of saying I don't need to explain myself. I put it
I
on
like
my
that.
wall,
Uh-huh.
and it says everything about me. Now I don't
Mhm.
have to explain it to you. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, that's wonderful.
is I because people will say, well, why did you buy that? Most people would say, well, why would you buy such a dark piece of art or something like that?
Mhm. Mhm.
And they would say, I don't need to explain it. This explains it. Explains my personality. This
Mhm.
explains my taste,
Mhm.
uh, my thinking, my emotional state, everything. So, people buy because they resonate. It resonates with them.
Mhm.
They don't have to explain it.
Well,
And that's
So
just,
that was the moment. Yeah. Yeah.
that is good. And it's so interesting how, as we're sharing our stories, how the feedback is so integral for the artist's career, for the artist's growth.
Totally.
When we hear that wow, or that, reaction, whatever the reaction may be, that all of a sudden we're like, oh, I think I got something here. I think there's potential here. I
oh
think
yeah.
there's something that triggers, I think, our back, in the mind, and like, I must look for what that is, because a lot of
Yeah.
times
The
that
other,
feedback doesn't give
sorry.
you what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and on that point, Sergio, is a good thing because I relate it back to what Lee is doing now
Hmm.
and what she was doing when we met her at the Weevil. And
Hmm.
it took a confidence to say, and I think that's just your personality, Lee. I think you're extremely, you come across as very uh, confident. You're confident within yourself. I think maybe it's part of your profession in the past. You're able to talk about things. You're able to talk to people, and that's a really important thing. But I think by taking the step to go into that Wevolve, you said, I'm opening myself up here for potentially could be devastating, or it could be
Absolutely.
incredibly rewarding. And I
Absolutely.
think, and you came in saying, well, either way, I'm going to find out that weekend.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
and what you took away from it was, now I know I've got the direction, I've gotten the feedback, good and bad. You started to realize in that program, you realized where your strengths are and your weaknesses are. Right? So you went away after that weekend and you just motored into it.
Oh
And
yeah.
I think that's the success of the program, but also the success of the artists that we love to see. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. It was monumental. And that's the thing. If we can contrast a little bit, dentistry does not have that soft spot.
yeah.
Dentistry does not have that vulnerability that art has for me.
Mm.
And I, when I paint, if you will, I think I am the kindest to myself when I'm painting.
Beautiful. That's beautiful.
Hmm.
I tend to be harsh on myself. my life has been, I've always had to work really hard. I'm an immigrant. I came from Chile at 17. I didn't speak English. I have sort of that background. And so everything had to be, go, 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 don't stop until you
Mm.
get to the finish line. And actually, a beautiful thing also happened, which has gotten me to the point where now when I paint, I am the
Mm.
kindest to myself. And Dr. Yanina at that We Evolved talked about, because I would be really hard on myself when I would not be always painting. And she said that, there are seasons to do everything.
Hmm.
And she also told me to celebrate the little wins, which
Yeah.
I have never in my life done. It was always, hey, don't get distracted. You don't deserve this yet. Get to the finish line. And she said, that's not how you should approach things. She was doing a talk for all of us. She said,
Mm.
it's very monumental in art as an artist to celebrate the small wins. And I was
Yeah.
like,
Very
what? I
important.
should definitely try that. But on the note of finding your style and finding your voice, I think we should also, which sort of ties that in, I think, we should pay attention when we're not creating, because we are. I've realized this, that when I am not painting after everything that she said, that I am creating. It's sort of like I am nurturing the paintings. And that's how it feels to me. I don't know if it sounds a little kooky, but I feel like I am nurturing those paintings before I create them. Almost like a just emotional gestational period when I am not painting. And I think we should pay attention to those times, because we are creating and we're being true to ourselves, and that's what we will put on the canvas, and that's what's going to resonate with
Right.
our audience. So I think in some of my introspections, I've realized that. I'm sorry.
Right. No,
But
you're totally right. And, once you have the artist mind, you're an artist wherever you go, whatever you are doing. The artist is the artist, in all situations. So you may be doing gardening or working with the goats, and all of a sudden you have
mhm,
an idea, you have something that you cannot wait to get back in the studio and get to work, and I think the three of us can attest to that, right?
Mm.
You may be at the grocery store, and all of a sudden you see a color like, oh my god, that's exactly what I need right now.
and
Gotta
that
get
will
back in the studio.
that will click. So pay attention to the times you're not creating, because you definitely are. And even
So good.
that will help you find your, style. And then you will be like,
Right.
oh, I think I got something. I think I
Yeah.
got something. But you weren't actively painting. Um,
Do
so
you
yeah.
not think that comes with, I mean, your your environment, for example? You live, clearly you own goats, so you're not living, in downtown Manhattan. Uh, so you were out in the forest. You're out in the inspiration comes from the sounds, the visuals around you, the fall seasons in Oregon. So I think that's also an influence, right?
Oh yeah,
That you I
absolutely.
grew up in Canada, and I grew up with big space, like the grandness of Canada, and farming, and that reflects in the colors that I use, but even to this day. So how many years later, 35 years later, I'm still influenced by that initial influence, which was my environment,
Mhm.
Right.
and you do that so well.
I love
Yeah,
being outside. I think I've learned
of
to be
course,
a little bit more in the moment, because again, I am wired to always be in the future, achieving this or achieving that,
excellent.
or trying to be prolific at this. But with the goats, in fact, I take a lot of times the podcasts to the barn as I'm doing the
Yeah.
tour, and I love to mix the two. And I get some pretty cool ideas because I'm in the moment. I'm listening to art. I'm listening to the podcast, and yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, it happens.
Well,
That
there's,
is,
and I'll give you a
yeah.
little piece of advice. Put a speaker in the barn with the goats because I grew up in farm country.
Mhm.
I worked on farms all my young life, and my father was a dentist actually. But I hung out with friends on farms,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember, there was always music playing in the barns, right? They always had a radio going for the cows or horses or whatever. And I had the greatest story because I did an interview in Canada about my work, uh, and it was broadcast across Canada on one of the CBC, which is like nationwide. It was in a time slot like you couldn't buy that time slot. And years later, I was home in Canada, and someone, I'm way up north in the middle of nowhere at a dinner party with friends in a farmhouse somewhere, and somebody says, "Oh, Drew Harris, wait a minute. Were you interviewed by CBC, for an interview?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I was in the barn milking, and I heard that interview. I still remember it." And I'm thinking, wow, it's good. It's getting into the barns of
It's
North
getting into
America. Wow. People are milking and cleaning out stalls and listening to my interview. So
Right. That's right. Milking the goats and
yeah,
just
so
showing all of your
take your podcast, this podcast, and just dupe it, and then just keep playing it in the barn for your goats. And they'll love you for it.
They love you for that. They might become artists too,
Yeah, that's
right?
right.
That's good
And
advice. Very good.
There's something I really would like to ask you too. I know a lot of about Drew's family, and we're good friends. We have become good friends too. And we believe the
Yes.
support of the family is also a big part of our successes as artists. In your case, because you also changed careers and you're starting embarking in something so totally new. I don't know if you are the first artist in your family or not, but tell me a little bit about the impact of you being an artist in the family. Whatever you want to share, of course.
Well, yes, I think my family is used to me being a little different. So
Okay.
there is no one in my family was a dentist or a medical doctor or a lawyer. Um, everybody, my dad just had some high school, probably a little bit of college, and just for some reason all I ever wanted to do was to be a dentist ever since I was a little girl. I don't know where that came from because I think I went to the dentist twice in you know
Yeah.
ever, if that.
Never.
And I don't even know if he was a real dentist. No.
That's even better.
But exactly. And so I don't know, that was in my mind ever since I was a little girl.
Mhm.
And my dad was great at sort of feeding that dream and saying, yes, that's
You can do it.
great. Go for it, right?
Mhm.
Um and it was fantastic until my junior year of high school, and he said, "Oh yeah, regarding that, you can't because we don't have any money to send you to school."
Mhm.
Back in the day and in Chile, you couldn't go to the university unless,
Yeah.
you could pay for it.
Yes, that's right.
But somehow it sort of was all of a sudden that realization, right? And so I think then he has an aunt or a sister and a brother in the United States, and I've always heard ever since I was little, oh, United States is a different world. It's a
Mhm.
different world up there. Is what I always heard growing up.
Mhm.
It's a different world up there, and so I said, okay, well, I don't want to not be a dentist. Like, I need to figure this out. And he said, I tell you what, here in the United States, you can work and go to school. So why don't you try that? And I said, yes, I'm going to try that. Except
Wow.
I had never met my aunt or my uncle. And so anyway, it's sort of to give you a little bit of a glimpse at my
Yeah.
personality, right? And so being 17, my dad gives me a one-way ticket to United States and to leave, and right, and
Wow.
Hmm.
and so I'm like, okay, bye, right? Because I'm gonna be a dentist. There's no ifs or buts about it because in that different world, you can do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Except I didn't speak English, nor didn't know these people. But in any event, it worked out fine.
Wow.
And so, I'm the only dentist in the family, but to say that something was missing, when I decided to sell the practice would be an understatement.
Mm-hmm.
Something seriously missing. And my family never knew I wanted to be an artist. Neither did I. I
Mm-hmm.
think it was so deep down, I didn't know. But I remember when I bought my private practice that it was a really big practice and it had huge hallways. And I thought, this looks like an art gallery.
Oh wow.
And I
So you'd
painted,
already set the influence already.
and I painted a couple of paintings and I took them to work and I hung them up. And I told my staff and I didn't sign them. I told my staff to keep an ear open and see if my patients would say something good about the paintings. So I put one in the hallway and I would put one in the hygiene room because the hygiene room was little and I knew the patients had no choice but to stare at that wall, right? And then I would ask my hygienist, hey, did Mrs. So-and-so said something? And she would say something. Most of the time, no, because they were terrible. And then sometimes they would say, oh yeah, Mrs. So-and-so said something. And that would make my day.
Well, you opened yourself up to a big fall there. If that
Yeah.
could have changed your career immediately. But being the personality that you are,
Yes. Oh no,
clearly
love
that.
those. I love no's. They fire me up, and then I want that even more, and they just make me more excited. So no's are not a problem for me.
Do you think
And
that's your
so
Chilean background?
I don't know. I don't
But
think
so
most of
clearly,
my family is like that.
one of the questions I'll just interject for a second, but that's another observation that I had about we take our original culture with us, no matter where we go, and
Yeah.
those colors behind you. I mean, I've never been to Chile, but I assume that those, and I think I mentioned we spoke of this, I believe, during the Weevil, that your colors really are probably inherently your culture from when you were a child, the Chilean color in art and in craft, and that kind of thing.
Probably because they're very
Yeah,
bright. They're
yeah,
they're
very, very. And this is
they're
what I
very
Mm-hmm.
bright and they're very colorful. Although I think a good mix, I think of this. It truly has to do when I made a trip um, to Belize
mm,
about 7 years ago, which was when I started making my first painting.
Mm-hmm.
And I
was
went
it the
inside this
color?
art gallery and I saw this magnificent, huge painting, which, by the way, they're nudes. Um, and the colors were magical. And I think inspired me so much, and which I bought it and it's in my hallway. And I talked to the local people and they said, oh, everybody here in the island is pretty much an artist. Like we all paint. And I thought, Drew, I said, I'm in the island. So I'm going to take that with me because if it's like a
Yeah.
magical thing in the island, if everybody in the island, and I felt that way, and I came home and I started painting, and that's when I started making my first
See,
painting.
there you go.
I did not
And
I
then
couldn't
yeah.
stop any. I couldn't not be that, whatever that was. I just couldn't not be. And then you guys came along and then you gave me just a recipe for a guidance because I have no idea.
Well,
And
thank you.
no, and I think that's fantastic. But no, in my family, there's no one that is an artist. And I
Mm.
think they thought, she's always been a little weird now.
Now it makes sense, right?
She was a dentist. Now she doesn't want it anymore, and she's an artist. What?
Yeah,
But
that's great.
no, I think that I like that sort of
Mm-hmm.
duality between having had a career um, that just had a lot of academic in it
Mm,
and
yeah.
being a self-taught artist. Self-taught, I say that lightly because I think like Sergio says, we curate our own education, being part of
Yeah. Yeah.
The art next level, I cannot say I'm self-taught, because basically all of my teachings are from Sergio, and everything I know that's been helpful and has gotten me here are because I've learned from him, because he actively teaches me. But in the
Yeah.
sense of, creating art and just kind of painting, in that way I am self-taught. And so I hope I am just as successful in a way, and to try to sort of prove that myth that, artists, if they don't go to school, they sometimes don't tend to do as well. Or if, they don't
But
come
that's
from,
all myth making. That's
right.
just myth.
Yeah.
And
You know,
so,
we're driven by our own,
yeah.
desires, and we
Oh, yeah.
succeed because we simply say no to the no's.
Yeah.
To the people that say you can't do that. You're from here. You've studied this. You have to take that path. If any of us had said, yeah, you know what? Okay, I agree. We wouldn't be here today,
Yeah.
talking, because
Yeah.
it's a we're the classic anti-establishment,
Yes. And
industry, right?
we need to
Yeah.
sift through that and
Sure.
really only pick those gold nuggets, because the rest is
Yeah.
just, not very encouraging.
What do you see for the future, in the immediate future, with your work?
Me.
You're building a studio, yeah?
She's
So
building a
yeah,
beautiful
so
studio.
I'm building a studio, and I am trying to sort of distill this information from Sergio to sort of, have this roadmap. I do like sort of roadmaps, and he helps me see that.
Mm.
And I see, doing more collections that, in fact, I'm starting another collection now that's a little moody, little sultry. It's vibrant, but with deep vibrancy, not very colorful. And
Excellent.
I think that's also working, because that it's
Mm.
also very true to myself. And I think that I see this going forward, and just exponentially going forward. I have thousands and thousands of people that I want to show my art to. I just now applied to shows this year for the first time, to jury shows, because
Mm.
sort of learn how to go about it. And I applied to 13 jury shows for this year.
Well
For the
done.
first time, I've gotten 6 yeses.
That's a
I
great
have
number.
4 wait lists that hopefully
Wow.
they will turn to yeses. I've gotten only 2 no's, and I'm still waiting on 1. So I
So how
am
do the how do
stubborn.
the goats feel about this? Do they
The
feel
ghosts feel
neglected? Are
fantastic.
they like, you go
Celebrating
for
with
it,
you.
mom, go for
Yeah.
it?
Yep, it's summertime, so they have a little bit more time on their own. And husband is very supportive to answer,
Excellent.
Drew's question about having support.
Yeah.
My kids are very supportive. I
Very
have
good.
2
Wonderful.
teenagers. They're very supportive. My mom is also very supportive.
That's good.
But
That's what you need.
but having said that, just to touch up on that episode of, finding support, I think that's another very important thing. I've never known another artist really, and just through this art next level, I've been able to find sort of peers and meet people that I
Mm.
only know dentists. My husband is a dentist, so
Oh
I
boy, it really
only that's
does run
how
in
we
the
met.
family.
We met in dental school. So our next level has given me that, more support, because to
The
complement,
network. Yeah.
the 3 people that are like, oh, okay, that looks good. And
Right.
also my accountability partners. That's very
Yes.
important. I actually have 2,
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
have been magical. I was going through a little tough time not long ago, and they just pulled me right out. And that's the beauty of having, accountability partner. And that's what the program
Very
has done for
important.
me
That's
too,
super.
because
That's
I
Nice,
super.
didn't have that in
really
my
good to
life.
hear. It's
Yeah,
really
Yeah.
good to hear that your peer
absolutely.
group can, and you were open enough to say, okay, yeah, you know what, I'm going through a
To
slump.
accept it. Yeah.
And this is why we're talking to you in many ways, but also in reflection of last week, we're
Mhm.
talking about slumps and about choices that we make
Oh
and
yeah.
how we get out of these things and
Yeah.
reinvent
They
ourselves,
got
right?
me out. They truly
So,
did. Because in fact, to be on, I am a little bit, private, and I didn't even share those things with almost my entire family. But I went to my accountability partners and I said, you know what, you guys, this is what's happening. And in fact, I told them I'm going to unplug for a little bit, yada, yada, yada. And they just pulled me right out. And
well, they're artists. They're
That's
artists,
good.
and they've gone through it themselves, and that's
yeah.
that's the most important thing
You're
So
about
right.
this
I am so
academy. About the
appreciative. And
yeah,
again, it's from this program. You guys say,
yeah,
hey, get an accountability partner. And it saved me. It truly did, because it could have been detrimental. So, and I'm
of
more fired
course,
up than
yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
We have
I
our
love that.
business. We have our business advisors.
Hmm.
We go to a doctor for advice, right?
Right.
We've always got an accountability person somewhere.
Yeah.
But when it comes to our art,
Right.
having an accountability person as an artist or
Yeah.
two,
Yeah.
they understand the ebb and flow of a business that is not like any other business.
Mhm.
So it's really important, and I encourage you to keep those going because uh, with them, you grow and they grow. So,
Yes.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yes.
Right.
We
what's
have
your
a job
take,
to conquer
Sergio?
the world. So, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's good. I wanted to touch really quickly on something that you said earlier, that it makes a full circle, which I think is a wonderful thing in your story,
Mm,
that I wanted to point out. I've been thinking about it as we were chatting at the beginning. You said how over this weekend you had this woman who saw your work, and the compliment she gave you, and like she saw herself in your art, right? And just a few minutes ago, you talked about how when you went to Belize, you saw this painting and you saw yourself in the painting, and you purchased the painting. And, uh,
Hmm.
now you have done for somebody else what that artist
what
did
you
for
did.
you
Oh,
back
wow.
then.
Yeah, exactly.
And now
Wow.
that circle is, I think that gives you
Wow.
another level of confidence coming from this experience this weekend, and say, art gave me something, and now my art is giving that something to
Yeah,
somebody else.
Oh,
exactly.
And I think that's a beautiful something. Again, another of those things, to small wins, but that mean a lot and
oh,
that have value. So something for you to
Certainly.
think about.
It's
Right
you
on.
are yeah, exactly. What a great way to sort of finish this
Mhm.
conversation up. It's you know, I like the way Sergio works. I love the way he can see the both, the beginning and the end. Well, we're not near the end yet. Let's hope. Um, but yeah, and I think you're right. And there's there. I believe in this. I think I've talked about it before. I
Mhm.
believe in an energy that you have within art. You can walk into a gallery and see 100 pieces, and for one reason you can't understand, one is reflective. You are drawn to it, and you don't know why. It's
Mhm.
just there. It's there. You identify with it, and you have to have it.
Mhm.
You've connected in a really spiritual and sort of cosmic energy kind of way.
mhm.
Whereas the rest of the paintings, you could give or take.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
this is what I look for in clients.
Mhm.
If they're moved, they don't have to tell me why, because I don't think they can explain why.
Right.
Mhm.
And
Right.
so never doubt that. I'm always lost for words why I'm drawn to certain work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why I was drawn to your work, Lee. The rather than the figurative work, I was drawn, excuse me, to the fractal work, to the
Mhm.
color. It identified with it. Same with Sergio. You know,
Mhm.
certain series of his work, I'm really drawn to. Others, not so much. That's not saying anything badly about his work. That's a preference.
Yeah. Yeah. We
But
all have.
you have to be able to read your audience.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
so, as we start getting closer to the wrapping up of our session, I have asked Lee to think about a question that she could ask Drew, and a question that she could ask me. So, Drew, you are the host for the
Oh,
next few
you
minutes.
always
So,
put me on the spot.
go ahead, Lee. So,
Well, I think that I guess I'm being just a little bit selfish here, but because I like to remember, or I don't like to remember, but I tend to remember what people said, and actually Drew said something on a podcast that touched me. He was doing an interview about um, sort of having a support system and all of that. And then he said to this girl, I remember when you reached out to me and you had you were wondering how to expand things, and I guess she's into like environmental,
Oh
and
yeah.
and then Drew said, and at that time I was on vacation in Canada,
Mm.
and I was
Yes.
outside, and we had that call, and you wanted me to find a little bit more for your art, and Drew said, and it became so obvious to me that I was sitting in front of your solutions.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that was amazing, because Drew has that thing where he can always find the perfect solution. But the way he said it, when he said, and it became obvious to me that I was sitting in front of your solutions. Um, it
We
is
all
so
are, though. That's
it was
yeah.
so cool. And then which my questions are coming. And then um I happened to click on something about 3 years ago. Sergio did a podcast, and he said, what I like to do for some people is to have them meet me at the door.
Yes.
And it had to do with impact.
Speaking of your art with impact, yeah.
And the meet
Yeah.
me at the door
Meet
was
me
the
at the
M.
uh-huh.
And he explained how when he has things in his paintings that resonate with people, he is not going
Mm.
to, like Drew says, spell it out for them. I love that. So he says, meet me at the door. And then I guess you guys are going to have to, whoever's listening, go and look into that episode, because it's fantastic impact. And so anyway, I love the meet me at the door, and I remember that. And so I wanted to ask each of
Good
you.
memory. That's about 6 years ago or
Yeah.
something when
Yeah.
I did that one.
Well, I watched it about a year and a half ago, and it was like back then a 3-year-old thing. But the meet
Okay.
me at the door, it was amazing. I
But the
almost
door
was
plays
like,
important part in almost every conversation we've ever had, right,
I was like, I
Sergio?
want to do a
Yeah.
show. I want to do a show that it's called Meet Me at the Door. And I
Yeah.
still have all these ideas for an art show called Meet Me at the
That's
Door.
a good
But
title.
anyway,
Uh-huh.
what
Question. Yeah.
what has someone said, like that lady said to me, I think I can almost hear them, that has
Mm.
like grabbed you and you were like, oh my God. Like, I know, Sergio, you do cycles of life, and so has anyone said, oh my gosh, something that's just really hit that soft spot in a way that just it was elating but a little bit painful? Do you recall something like that?
I
I
can,
do.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I can recall like the very first time that I felt that art had power to speak to someone is exactly a situation that I will really quickly. I'll tell you the story. I was a young artist, emerging artist. I was doing shows everywhere. Somebody invited me to do a show somewhere, I would say yes. It was like
Mm.
be as many places as
Yeah.
I could. So I was invited to this church to go and put my artwork and talk about my art. So I said yes, of course. So I went. I put a show in the back, and then at the end, people went and they were chatting. And then I had a small painting with two hands like this. Uh, I had traced my hands, and I had put. It was very colorful painting. And then as I was talking to people, I saw from a distance a young woman who she was probably maybe 16 or 17, something like that, and she was in front of that painting, and she was like sobbing, crying on in front of it, and like it touched me. Like I wonder why is it that bad of a painting? Again, I was very young. I didn't know. I hadn't heard much feedback on my art back then, so I went and I asked her if everything was okay, and she said, your artwork really touched me because when I walked and I saw this piece
Mm.
when I was a little girl and my dad left us and said goodbye for the last time I saw him, I was a little girl against the windows of my
Wow.
bedroom
You're
looking
gonna
at
get
him.
me crying.
I
Where's
know.
the
She says
tissues?
in the exact same position. And
Wow.
says, and
Yeah.
your painting
Yeah.
took me to that moment. So it
Wow.
took her to a painful memory, but I remember those words like stayed on like 40
Wow.
years ago,
Yeah,
you know, when I understood for the first time the power of art, the power of an image. You know, we have no
absolutely
idea. In my
beautiful.
studio, I just had made in my hands and it was very cool and colorful. I had no idea it could carry for someone that emotional context. And since then, it changed kind of how I look at it.
Wow.
Yeah, I tell you that is crazy, man.
Hmm.
But it's it's perfect. I mean, I don't even want to give my thing now.
No, go
Uh,
ahead, go ahead.
I mean, it was so
All good.
beautiful. I mean, because we can all understand it. We can all understand being a child at the window, the emotions of looking
Hmm.
out, whether it's a, whatever emotion you were feeling at
Yeah.
the time. We all remember that. And I think if you can capture that and have someone cry in front of your work, I always say, oh, to Rothko, sitting in front of a
Hmm.
Rothko painting, and people say, well, my kid could paint that. Well, I said, well, they didn't. He did,
They did it.
and
Yeah.
and there's something about the work that is, you immediately almost want to cry, and
Mhm.
and you don't know why. There's an energy. There's an energy,
Right.
and I'll let me answer mine because
Yes,
I
yes.
know we got to go now. Uh, the best thing ever said. It was in an article written by a very good critic or something years ago here in Malaysia, actually. And they said, we were talking about, they were trying to describe my work
Hmm.
for the public. And they said only one line, and it was beautiful. And I've used it before. There's a subtle hum in Drew's work. You can't hear it, you can feel it. And
Mm.
I thought, okay, now I've done it. I've gotten to the place where I need to be.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because that's exactly what I want. I don't want people to. I want them to feel it, and
Hmm.
that's what we do, right? As artists, we
Hmm.
want people to. So it's a beautiful sort of transition from what Sergio just said, from what you said, Lee, earlier about your client resonating with the work, so deeply. They don't have to explain why.
Mm-mm.
Hmm.
It's just a feeling. You have to have that feeling.
Hmm.
So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Thank
Well, hopefully those were good answers for you, Lee. And
Oh, perfect. More
better,
than what I imagined, but I knew I would get some good stuff if I asked that
very good,
because you
very
guys
good.
are incredible, and
just
I know without a doubt that you impact a lot of people.
Well, thank you, Lee. And I want
thanks.
to say, you know, as we start wrapping it up, now for reals, we're wrapping it up. Thank you so much for joining us, Lee. It has been such a pleasure chatting with you. You are a confident artist. You are a confident
Yes,
person. You know, you and I came to this country around the same age, 16, 17. Yeah, I was 16 when I came here. You know, there's some similarities there, and to be in a foreign country and to fight the system to get where you're at and then to pursue a dream also where you had already a successful career that you could have continued doing forever,
Mhm.
to say I'm going to go 360 and do something else, that speaks of your determination. That
yes,
speaks also of how far you're going to go. So keep working. The history of
yes.
art is full of amazing artists who come to their career later in life and they become amazing, they do amazing things in the world.
Absolutely.
So you have a whole life ahead of you, Lee. So
Yes.
keep on rocking, keep on making great work.
Oh,
And
thank
thank you. Thank you, Lee. I was excited when Sergio suggested that we speak to you. Uh, we knew it would be colorful, and
Yeah.
you're awfully colorful. We appreciate your involvement in our, in the group, in Sergio's group, and especially with Dr. Yanina and everybody. You help round out that entire group. And the
Yeah.
the accountability partners, I think, are the one point I bring from all of this conversation. If you're a young artist or a new artist and so forth, get involved with somebody that is a mentor or a mentee uh, that you can bounce ideas from. Great point, Lee. And I'm going to stress that more, as
Mhm.
I talk more about this kind of work and stuff.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
yeah, thank
And
you.
yeah, and
Appreciate it.
before we go, for our friends who are listening to the podcast who cannot see your names right under the screen, please tell everyone where can they find you on social media, particularly on Instagram. Where can they see your work? Where can they connect with you, and also your website?
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I wanted to say you guys are incredible mentors, and I can have determination, but without your direction and encouragement, I still couldn't go anywhere. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you. We
you guys
appreciate it.
can find me on Lee Morrison Art, and that's for my Instagram, just Lee Morrison Art, and then my website is leemorrisonart.com.
Excellent. Well, we invite our friends
Sergio?
to please, you guys can find me at Sergio Gomez Art, of course, and Drew at Drew Harris Art as well.
Yes.
I want to say, please, to all friends who are listening, if you found this episode to be inspiring, do us a big favor, share it with your friends. Feel free to connect with
Yes.
either three of us. Connect with Lee if you enjoyed this episode. Send her a DM. Check out her work. And we appreciate you as well. If you have also some ideas of guests that you would like to see here in the podcast, please send us also a note about that. We would love to have them here and have another wonderful conversation like we just did with Lee. So thank you for being with us. Thank you for joining us. And we'll see you at the next level.
Check out our website at www.theartistnextlevel.com, where you will find our podcast library, learn about our upcoming webinars, find resources relevant to your career, and much more. Thanks for listening to today's podcast, and we'll see you at the next level.